Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
I like winning, and I tend to think of revenue management as kind of like a war between or war of these never-ending like battles of strategy. And the kicker though is that like if you win, which I love to win, but if you win, everybody wins.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
This is the Vacation Rental Mastermind Series, the Operators Edition. In early 2020, I did the same series featuring the service providers in the vacation rental space. Now, after the year that we just had in 2020, I think it's time that we showcase those who have been really leading the charge and having the boots on the ground during this crazy pandemic. In this short series, we're going to focus on what makes a sustainable and profitable vacation rental management company and why it's so key to learn these tools, tactics, and of course, structures that make these companies the way they are. So sit back, grab your pen and paper, drink your coffee, and enjoy the Vacation Rental Mastermind Series, Operators Edition. All right, everybody, welcome back to Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast. Again, it's never going to change, but I'm your host, Will Slickers. And I have an awesome guest today, my friend Sarah from Natural Retreats. How are you doing today? What is going on? Where are you coming from?
It is great. I am sitting in my home office, which doubles as my craft room, in Charlottesville, Virginia, where our main office of Natural Retreats sits. So
That's awesome.
That's where I am.
Awesome. Well, how's the weather? Is it okay, or you guys got?
Oh, today it's beautiful. It's Perfect. Beautiful today. I think it was like 60 degrees,
gosh,
maybe
so
60.
Jealous.
It's really nice.
So jealous. Okay, I'm driving. I'm on my way. Go have a picnic.
Come on.
That's awesome. Well, Sarah, I love just jumping right into the episode. So this is kind of a fun time where you get to tell the story behind Natural Retreats, and then of course a little bit about yourself. I want to hear how you got into the revenue management world and the just overall hospitality industry as a whole.
Sounds good. Well, Natural Retreats is an awesome company. I very, very readily, freely, and willingly drink the Kool-Aid there. It is one of the coolest places. It is like the coolest place I've ever worked. And I've worked in some pretty cool places. So we're a luxury vacation rental company. We're based in the US. All of our properties are in the US. We operate in some of America's most beautiful and iconic locations. We're in Palm Springs, we're in Lake Winnipesaukee. So from coast to coast. And our goal is to provide our guests and our owners just really consistent and positive and high quality experiences and service, and doing it with the best people that we can find. And like I said, I mean, I love my company, and I kind of sound like this really weird robotic poster child for the company, but I really do love the company, and it's so fun, and the people are great, and that I believe is obviously and sincerely what makes the company work. So that is who we are. I don't know if that's, what our website says, but that's what I say.
Hey, that's always good to get an inside scoop. There's great marketing for everyone on the outside, but for the internal aspect, I think it's great. Well, let's kind of get into your story. I'm kind of curious, how did you even get started with revenue management? And then not even that, just hospitality. Did you start in a certain place, a certain destination? What was the beginning origin for that?
Yeah. So I had no idea that this is where I would end up. I never had an inkling that this is where I would be right now in my career.
You didn't know in high school that you were going to become this
Oh
awesome
no.
revenue manager for a great, amazing company?
No. In fact, it kind of stumps some people because, if you actually go and like look at my LinkedIn or something, my background isn't exactly vacation rental. So I actually went to school for music and music and business. And the idea was always to have my own music school, which I did. And
What?
then
I
just
didn't know
over the
that.
course of life, I fell into vacation rentals. So eventually through hotels. So I was a teacher. I was a music teacher. I was a performer. And most recently, before I got into hospitality in general, I was teaching middle school chorus and general music.
Wow.
And here I am. So it's definitely it's been a windy road. Never would have thought this is where I'd end up, but it's quite possibly the coolest place ever. So yeah.
That's super cool. And I think it's another guest on the show said it's unconventional to be conventional, but then he said it was conventional to be unconventional to get into the industry. So like we all kind of accidentally or somehow fall into it.
Yeah.
So from school teacher to teaching chorus and music and performing yourself, getting into hospitality, what was that journey like? Tell me kind of you said hotels, so you got my interest really quick.
Yep, started in hotels. So like I said, I took a year off of teaching. The idea being my daughter was very young then, I'll get to be the broom mom and get to do all the cool stuff that, parents do with their kids when you can't do when you're teaching. So took a year off and then I decided this is the life. I am totally doing this. And I didn't go back to teaching. But when her dad and I split, I had to find work. And at that point, my teaching job was gone. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? And that's where I found that hotels have salespeople. I had no idea.
Nice.
I was like, what is hotel sales? I don't want to sell hotels. Like I couldn't do that. That's really what I thought I was going to do. I thought hotel sales was like selling hotels. And I was like, man, I haven't even like barely sold a car. I can't sell a hotel. And so, but I applied. I mean, I was like, okay, well, I got to find a job. So I applied for a director of sales position at a hotel here in Charlottesville. And
no background at all.
I
just jumped right into director of sales.
I didn't know what it was.
That's
I was
awesome.
like, okay, well, I mean, I've kind of done sales before a little bit. And so I went in there and they were like, well, this is, to use your word, unconventional. It's kind of an unconventional background here, but tell us about yourself. And so I kind of tried to sell the parts of me that I thought might work, and it worked. And they were like, all right, we'll give this girl a shot. So that's how I ended up in hotels,
Wow.
Quite by accident and without knowing what it was. And someone was willing to, give me a shot. And I'm really glad that they did. So I started in sales. I started as a director of sales at a hotel. And then I moved kind of in the sales world. I took another job in sales as well. And then I decided that I really, really loved those revenue calls that we would do every week. And I was like, I want to do that. And so I tried to figure out how to get that done. And I landed in a place that gave me the opportunity to try it. And I loved it. And I just never wanted to look back. So, I spent about a decade in hotel sales and then revenue management. Before I found Natural Retreats, that they were looking for a revenue manager. And I was like, oh, that's all me. It's got to be, it's going to be cake. I'm coming from hotels. It's going to be fine. I totally get revenue management. This is going to be great. And then I got to vacation rentals, short-term rentals. It was fun. That was an eye opener. But that's kind of the quick and dirty of how I landed in vacation rentals or short-term rentals from performing on a stage and teaching middle schoolers how to sing solfege.
Yeah. No, I love the background. We have very similar like aspects as a front office manager, and we go into the revenue meetings, with director of sales and of course the GM, and then being like, dang, I really like this. This is fun. Like we're doing cool stuff. Like we're executing strategies. all these other things. We're making some money. It was like gambling without your own money though. Like just kind of
right. And again, it's like the whole winning thing, right? It's
Yes.
like you want to win and you're always in competition with your, your competitors and
yourself.
it's always a friendly competition, but it's fun. It's a fun game.
Totally agree. Yeah. And in competition with yourself, how was our RevPAR compared to last year, year over year, all that other stuff. And then of course, my favorite thing with the front desk was how many upsells, like could we beat our upsell record every month? Could we continue to execute like the most effective upsell strategy ever? That was so fun. And my team had a blast with it. So yeah, I totally remember.
You have so many levers in hotels, right?
Yeah.
That you can really kind of pit against each other. And it is really, people have described it as kind of like that Tetris game.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is, you've got
100%.
so many cool levers and buttons that you can pull in hotels. So it is a fun experience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the Tetris analogy is dead on 100%. My question for you, because you and I both have experience for both hotels and vacation rentals, so this is something that you and I can both relate to, but what is the biggest difference with revenue management for hotels compared to short-term rentals? Because like you said, you thought like, oh, this is easy. This is great. I'm from hotels. Of course I could do revenue management for vacation rentals. What are you talking about? But then you jumped into it, you're like, oh boy, this is a lot different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, aside from the fact that each property has its own revenue strategy, besides that, there are universally accepted tools and resources in hotels, right? So, every hotel just about subscribes to and give and self-reports their star to Smith Travel for the star report.
Yeah.
Everybody gets that, right? Most hotels are using Hotelligence in some form or another. Each brand has their own version of like a pace report, a pickup report, a turn down report, and it's like, in Marriott, it might be called one thing, in Hilton, it's called another, but it's all basically the same thing.
Yeah, of course.
When I got to vacation rentals, I was like, so where's the pace report? And like people like, what? And it was through no fault of theirs. It was just, revenue management was just in a certain place in hotels, and they had, taken the mantle from airlines, and we are where we are now. And we were where we were when I came on almost 6 years ago in revenue management. And it was just this completely foreign territory in terms of the tools. And obviously those are developing now. You've got a lot of companies who are coming out with, dynamic pricing software and all sorts of things, but none of it is like, I would say none of it is to the point of where the hotels are. And part of it, I think, is because of where the hotels are in terms of their just general journey.
That, and of course, like
with
I think
with automation and everything. Yeah,
automation and distribution, and just the way it's room types versus a whole property. So the inventory numbers in one property versus the other, it's very different.
I mean the same owner, right? So, and again, you've got the Tetris thing that you can with upselling and everything. So you have so many different options in hotels, and so when you come to vacation rentals and you, number one, don't have the tools and the resources that you do in hotels, just to kind of tell you, just a level set, where are you, to benchmark you against yourself and against the competition easily, and with one or two tools. That I think is probably the biggest difference. That said, I think I don't see revenue management in vacation rentals or short-term rentals ever becoming the kind of machine that it is in hotels, just because of the nature of the product. So
yeah, that's a good point. And I think it's a nice different dynamic. Like it's good to know that when you're occupied, like versus 70% occupancy versus 30, the type of ADR you need to have in order to be able to cover your labor costs and all this other stuff. Like
trying to hit those thresholds. Like I got to get to 95% so I can get my my rewards, my loyalty point, that kind of stuff. You have so many other things that are at play too, which are fun. Again, Tetris. But it's definitely an entirely different ballgame.
Exactly. And like post-COVID, hotels were very on the books good with revenue, but cash flow wise, like you don't get that money until the guest
Right.
is checked in or / checked out. Versus short-term rentals, you're getting paid the moment they book for most companies. That's kind of the standard, especially if they book on Airbnb or Vrbo or other platforms. You're getting that cash immediately. It may not get paid out until after they check out,
Right.
but at the end of the day, it's still like it's there. It's waiting versus a
Well, yeah, I mean, on the books revenue for vacation rentals is a little bit more comforting, or like you can like kind of rest a little bit easier with that, as opposed to like on the books with a hotel that could maybe just
you could lose it all in
literally
a
it's
second.
all gone.
And the most OTAs are now veering away from virtual cards, like the prepaid, like virtual paid cards. And so, I think that's like a big thing for a lot of people that maybe don't recognize that hotels do pretty good cash flow when it comes to after the month is done, compared to, future bookings. But
yeah, it's funny. We always talked flex flow in hotels because it was so much a part of everyday operations.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not as big in vacation rentals for sure.
No, definitely not. My question to you, so I'm kind of curious from your guys' standpoint with natural retreats and just your overall, I know every revenue manager is different. And like you said, you like to win. So it's kind of like a competition. My thing is, where do you normally start when you are sitting down for the day and like figuring out, okay, what are we like, how do you even just compare the market? Do you look at what's currently going on with your strategy, your pace or lack of pace for a lot of people, especially during COVID? I'm just kind of curious, where do you even start?
That is like the $14 million question, right? Or trillion, if you want. It changes every day because every day and the situation and circumstances change. So it really kind of depends. But like I said earlier, I mean, each property has its own revenue strategy. So, you're even within the same market, you're looking very differently at one property versus another. So in one of my beach markets, I may have a home that is that is like the peak season warrior. It is full from, Memorial Day straight through Labor Day. But then you have other homes that may not do so well during that time, but man, they crank it out during the shoulders. They're kind of the shoulder beasts. And you really have to know which one it is, and then to optimize from there. I think sometimes when I will say when I first came into vacation rentals versus hotels, it was kind of this, you just have to be full, or you're trying to get to this certain occupancy number. And one of the things that I really, I think, had to learn over the years is that, obviously filling and occupancy is important, but just like a hotel, you don't want to be full necessarily. You want to be either oversold and knowing that you're going to have some slippage there, or, you want to be the last to fill, that kind of thing. So it's not always good to be full all the time, because then there's a question of, what are you leaving on the table? But I think even more than that, with vacation rentals, it's what kind of property do you have, and what kind of portfolio, what is your portfolio made up of? So what's realistic and what's optimal for your particular portfolio? It might not be optimal that you're full with all of your properties in the peak season. And if you are, then maybe you need to reevaluate, because maybe, you're doing something wrong. So that's kind of a long and winded kind of answer. And I don't know if it really answers what you were asking, but I think that because of the difference between, from one property to another, and they can be right next door, same layout. But the way that you have to, manage those, whether it's because of the property itself or because of the owner or because of who knows what variable there, you have to manage it differently. So, I'm on, for us as Natural Retreats, we have properties across the country, like I mentioned in the beginning. So you have varying seasonalities, so, there's never really a downtime for us because when beach is done, here comes ski.
Yeah.
So for us, it's a matter of, we have to make sure we're prioritizing based on seasonality, on a large scale, but then on a more granular basis, it really is kind of a daily look at what's going on in each market and how that affects each property. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It definitely explains what I think most people don't realize, that it's not wake up, do some yield management, and kind of see how it goes. It's very different. With like you said, there's so many variables that go into it. And my question to you was my new question to you is how often does the operational costs, such as cleaning and amenities that you provide and all these other stuff, go into your revenue strategy? Is there a certain like point where you're like, okay, we can never go below this nightly rate for this type of stay because it costs us X dollars to even just turn the place around for the next guest? Is that
if you don't know what that number is, like, that's a problem. So that would be the first thing. And that number changes seasonally often. So it is always part of how we're pricing and how we are, restricting or not restricting. And it has to be, or you're going to lose money. Or you're not going to, I guess that's the same thing. I would say, or you're not going to be able to make as much as you possibly can. You're not going to be able to optimize, which is essentially the same as losing money.
Leaving money on the table. Yeah.
It's got to be a part of it. And if it's not, then that is a huge problem.
Yeah. No, the only reason why I ask is because a lot of people think, okay, this is like how we're going to set our prices Mondays and Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and then Fridays, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to leave it at this. And then hopefully we'll get the better weekends and we'll have like the weekdays, but then not realizing what it kind of costs them in order to do a turnaround, especially if they have a back-to-back at different pricing modes and like just strategies and stuff. So the reason why I bring that up is just I know a lot of the listenership, especially on the podcast here, is that I think the revenue management is one of the finer subjects that is not covered enough in educational tools, resources, in my opinion. Of course, there's companies like yours who hire amazing people like you and a few other like businesses around the world. But in all, I think the overall like new property manager or host really don't understand like that part. They're just trying to get occupancy at a certain rate in order to pay the bill. Whether it's
I do think revenue management has just come so far since I've joined in this industry. And it's really amazing, actually. And I think a lot of times, we sell some of our competitors, and I say competitors in a very friendly way, sell ourselves short because at the end of the day, the goal is to be profitable. Mm-hmm. And so, how do you do that? And it's actually kind of pretty basic, which is you take in more than you have to spend or that it costs you. Mm-hmm. And I think we all understand that. And, whether you're someone who's been in business for 6 months or for 16 years. But yeah, I do think that, and that's been really interesting. That particular topic or subject has been coming to the top. It's been coming to the top a little bit more lately in terms of profitability and, can you really be profitable if you don't understand all of your costs? Mm-hmm. And my response to that would be, well, no. But as a business, it's our obligation, whether you're in revenue management or operations or sales, to understand what your costs are so that you have an idea of what you can do. Because if you don't understand what your costs are, you don't really have a good handle on what you can actually do.
100%. I love how you worded that. It's perfect. For a lot of people, I think, and I love that you brought up the overall conversation of profitability, because, pre-COVID, let's just say a lot of travel and hospitality businesses were thriving and doing very well. It was a very good year for the industry as a whole. Early, March, April, we saw that a lot. I think everybody was kind of scrounging. We all, let's just be honest. If you weren't scrambling at that time, there's probably something going over your head. But the overall, I think we've seen the aftermath of it, that the businesses and companies, whether they're in our industry or not, that went out of business very quickly, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5, maybe 2 months. And granted, that's doesn't say they weren't making profit or anything like that, but
Sure.
their burn rate was probably super high when they got into that low, red zone. But for a lot of people now, we're really realizing like the importance of profitability and understanding these numbers and how that sustainability for the long term for your business. And I kind of want to like bring up something that I saw you were featured in, and that's the hotel.school project with AJL and the whole team there. So can you tell us about, did that have anything to do with your course design and the way you kind of built out that course with them?
I would say maybe not directly, but I think, I speak with with AJL and with the team there, just on a, I guess, professional level, just to share ideas, and we are, we respect each other in terms of what we're doing. And one of the things that I really loved about what AGL is doing right now is bringing this topic to kind of the forefront of vacation rentals, short-term rentals in general. So I think that when, I said, yeah, I'd like to work with you on this, and they had approached me about it, I think it was kind of just this, hey, we're a good fit because, we share similar thoughts about this. They were not like, hey, you should put this in your course. And I mean, each of the courses were written by the people who presented them.
That's awesome.
So it wasn't like they said, here, you need to put these things in at all. It wasn't like that at all. But I think they certainly probably sought out people that shared similar
similar
ideas
views, but also
and theories.
Yeah, but also execute and have proof of what they do at a high level. I think you can say Natural Retreats is a high level of revenue management.
We like to think so.
Yeah.
I mean, there are days, believe me, we have days where we're just like, can we bang our head against this wall any harder, and will anything happen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
We all have those days, and I think a lot of it with revenue management is just trying. You got to try different things, especially now. You've mentioned COVID, the pandemic, whatever, a few times, and I mean that is really where we are. We don't have, historical stuff isn't really super helpful right now.
No.
That said, it's a benchmark.
Yeah.
So, at least where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the things that I think is kind of dangerous is to say, well, historical data has no place right now. And I think that's wrong. I think that, even if it doesn't help you the way it used to, I think it's giving you that benchmark. And at the very least, it will help you in the future. So I hope that we're recording the data now and we're tracking it, so that, a year from now, 2 years from now, when, something else, God forbid, happens, but it's going to, because that's just the way life works.
Yeah.
You have something else to rely on. So historical data is really important, even if it's, maybe not primarily important at this point. But I'm totally going off topic, and I'm sorry, but that just made me think about that.
No, I love that. I think that's super important, because data, like, people can be like, well, I'm just not going to count this year's revenue to be accurate for future years. And I was like, well, I love that you said the word benchmark, because it is a benchmark. Like, we can't just choose what data we put in and want to listen to. Like, it's still data. And so that's like, that's the understanding point, is that you need to understand these numbers now, whether like they're good numbers or not. Just because,
well, they are the numbers, right? Like, they're the accurate numbers. And so you have to, if you need to put an asterisk next to it next year, great, do that. But understand that that's actually what happened. So
yes,
good, bad, for good or bad,
Yeah, no, I love that you said that. I'm totally on the same page. You just can't pick and choose what data you want to record or not record, and all that good stuff. But so I wanted to pick your brain, just because it's very rare for me on the show to have the opportunity that has someone like yourself who's been both hotels and vacation rentals, because one of my personal goals is I'm trying to bridge that gap. I think we are a great industry of hospitality and travel. And so my question to you is, what can one or the other learn from each other when it comes to revenue management? Obviously, they both have a lot of differences, when it comes to brand, property, destination, all that good stuff. But what are things that either hotels can learn from vacation rentals or vice versa?
It's kind of hard to just maybe isolate it to one or two things. I think vacation rentals should be able to appreciate what's come before them, which in airline, hotels, after them, and appreciate the tools and the automation that we mentioned earlier that they've developed over the course of time. And in addition to that, in addition to recognizing that and appreciating it, appreciating also that the revenue managers or people are still the ones doing the yeoman's work of revenue management in hotels. Mm-hmm. So we talk a lot about, and when I say we, it's the royal we. We talk a lot about dynamic pricing and automation and things like that, and which I think is fantastic because hotels they've been doing that. Airlines have been doing that, but they still have people who are doing the heavy lifting in a lot of ways. So I think that's really important. Actually, one of the reasons that I thought, maybe this is the time to get out of hotel revenue management is because I was in a Hilton property at the time. And the Hilton Garden Inn was the brand. And I can't even remember the name of it. It's Hilton Grow, I think. It was their revenue, their new revenue software, which is basically an automated software. And I was like, oh, I see the writing on the wall. Mm-hmm. It's done. Like, and honestly, and our company was talking about, we can, get rid of this and get rid of that, and we can streamline, make it more efficient. And I mean, from a business owner's perspective, totally get it. But I was like, that may not be good. But 10, 15 years later, they still have revenue managers. They still have their weekly revenue meetings with their revenue managers. In fact, one of the hotels that I used to work at not only has a brand revenue manager, they also have a corporate revenue manager. So they have two revenue managers for the same property. And they get in there and fight it out. But I think that what that says is that, there is a future in revenue management for actual people. Yeah. And so I think that's one thing that short-term rentals can look at. And appreciate. I think as far as hotels go, hotels, like I said, have all of these tools. They have these standardized tools and resources that they've been using for years. And short-term rentals, vacation rentals really haven't. And one of the things that I think you've seen with this pandemic has been, people are shying away from the hotels. They're trying to go for the more private, vacation rental experience. It feels safer to some people. And so, there's that. So that kind of helped vacation rentals out. But it was starting before that. Like, people were figuring out Airbnb and Vrbo. And, of course, those are the names that they hear because those are the ones that have the money to tell people about them.
In front of them, yeah.
But people were starting to kind of learn about this short-term vacation rental kind of thing before COVID ever came along. And if you think about it, we were able, and I say again, royal we were able to somehow get this message in front of the travelers without those standardized tools and without all of the reporting, without this, that, or the other. And I mean, if I were a hotel, I might be a little concerned because, if I'm speaking the truth, I mean, obviously I still have so many friends in hotels and I love them, but I want to come for your lunch. Like, that's kind of like, that's, again, it kind of goes back to the winning thing. But I think I don't think I'm the only one. I think we want to kind of spread the whole vacation rental, short-term rental gospel out there and be like, hey, we're here too. And we've got a lot of things that hotels don't or can't provide you. And we've done it by developing our own tools, oftentimes very manually and laboriously. But I think that's something that I think hotels should see as well. It's really easy to push a button in hotels. Like you just push a button, you put your dates in, it generates you this report. You know what to look for, you know the red flags, you know. And so in some ways, I would never say hotel revenue management is easier, because again, I think there are a lot more levers that a hotelier has. But in that sense of the tools, it is easier in that sense, because there's not this agreed upon, united process that there is there. But I think, to your point, you're trying to create this, like you're saying, this bridge between hotels and short-term vacation rentals, which I think is awesome, because I think we obviously have so much to learn from each other. And I mean, that's one of the things that, I mean, if anybody, if you know me at all, you know that like, that's one of my big things is like the whole concept of thought partners. Like, I really think that thought partners, people that you admire, your mentors, maybe people, that you appreciate, they have experiences that you want to learn more about, or whatever. I think it's really important that we learn from them. Yeah. And, I've got them in hotels, I've got them in vacation rentals, but I've got them in the arts. They run the gamut, because they provide a perspective for me that I think is really unique. And I think if we don't keep seeking out learning from, our peers and from those in hospitality on the hotel side or on the airline side or what have you, I think we stagnate. And I think that's pretty dangerous. But yeah, I mean, that's a super long answer to your, again, question, and I ramble a lot, so sorry, but I think there's a lot to learn. That both vacation rentals and hotels can learn from each other.
100%. And I love that you brought the key aspect and the key, I guess, I hate the term secret sauce, but is understanding the perspective. I think that's a gift as either hotelier or vacation rental manager, whether you're on the revenue side or the ops side or whatever, is understanding like we have to be able to put ourselves in different shoes every day, multiple times a day, different pairs of shoes, big, small, wide, skinny, you name it, all different types of, like, if I keep using the term shoes, is understanding perspective. And that's a huge part, because our guests alone are coming from all sorts of different perspectives. And I also think that, like you said, the fact that short-term rentals or vacation rentals have been able to get in front of this traveler without the same means and the brand name and recognition that hotels have is pretty intense, especially because vacation rentals, other than companies like yourselves at Natural Retreats, are unbranded. They're completely one-off properties. They're usually named after their owner, some kind of creative name that their owner creates, such as, the Red Door Inn or something like that. I don't know, like they find, certain ways, or like my parents love to use the Hillside Estates. Like they have that, certain phrase and term. And so like this is so unique, and it's, again, touches on that perspective aspect. And I think it's super key for us to continue to move forward. My final question to you really was, what are you looking forward to most when it comes to like recovery in the industry, whether it's any type of lodging type? I'm just kind of curious, what are you looking forward to most, like as the industry is starting to feel confident again, and like, all right, people are traveling, we're booking, we're getting revenue, we're creating experiences, we're doing it, like we're getting back in the game. What are you looking forward to?
I guess, well, first, it sounds bad, and so I'm trying to think of a way to like make it not sound bad. But in some ways, this whole pandemic thing has been really good for my brain, in that, I'm totally a geek at heart. Like that is, I love learning about things. I love trying to figure things out. And I love testing theories and, hey, I wonder what this is. And I wonder if I do this, what will happen? And so if anything, this has actually been a really deep growth period, I think, for me, just personally, as a revenue manager, as somebody who, lives in revenue management every day. The unknowns, the gray areas have been really exciting. And I think, I hesitate, when I think about recovery, it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if recovery is going to look like a return to normal. And I appreciated the fact that you didn't say a return to normal, because
it won't
I
be.
really, one of my theories is that there has been this really fundamental, if not permanent, long-term shift.
I'm in the same boat.
In what's happening. And so, I think there may be some companies that are in a certain market that we're used to for years, the way things have been. And as things recover, it's going to look, your guests are going to look different. You're going to have different drivers for them. Especially this year, some of the drivers are completely gone. So,
and some of the drivers are literally driving, like they literally want to drive. Like,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think there is this, there's kind of this misconception, at least I think it could be a misconception. That's my theory anyway, that there's going to be this recovery to something that we used to know. And I really don't believe that. I could be proven wrong completely, but I don't believe that. And so I think that one of the things, in terms of, it may not be something I'm looking forward to, but for someone who's a data geek and a tester and someone who wants to figure out what's going to happen, I think it's kind of exciting for revenue management, because I don't think it's going to be, it's going to be a long time before we're able to take those benchmarking things that we were talking about earlier and have them really tell us much of anything other than what has happened. And I think that's, if anything, it's maybe just a signal to us to say, hey, maybe be looking for things that you wouldn't normally look for, and keep an eye out for the things that used to be, the abnormal anomaly things, because they might not be anomalies forever. So I think for me, it's just kind of this exciting, recovery isn't really what I think a lot of people think recovery is. And that's exciting.
Totally.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a long way of answering that too.
I love it.
I'm sensing a theme with me.
I love it.
I ramble.
No, I think it's just super cool. It's a conversation I've been having on off the record and on the record with a lot of other people too, is just, the recovery. I don't even like saying new normal. Like, there's no new normal. This is just going to be a new phase. It's like, I love that you said shift. It's a proper shift in the industry. And I think in a lot of ways, an evolution of, hospitality, Airbnb going public and all these other things is really going to open up so much for both hotels, restaurants, vacation rentals, airlines, drive-to destinations that people never really went to. I'm more excited on the side of, people are discovering their backyard once again, discovering that there's so many cool places in their community that they can partner up with and create unique experiences and create this like little ecosystem that other ecosystems can be a part of once they travel to. It's really cool.
Isn't that funny how we all know, what's happening in New York City, or we've all seen pictures of the Grand Canyon, or we've all, Paris, the Eiffel Tower, but you don't actually know what's going on down the street.
100%.
Like, 100%. I think that it has definitely opened up opportunities for people, this whole thing, to get to know not only the people down the street, but, what's down there, not just the people, but like cool hikes or, all sorts of stuff that you never would have really uncovered in normal time, quote unquote.
Well, I love that. And this is another topic for probably another episode or a part 2 for this, but it's like the ability to tell a story. One of my favorite experiences was from when I worked for this company on Oregon coast. They had a brewery called Public Coast Brewery, like literally Public Coast. And that's because the ocean, the whole 362 miles, I can still remember the story in my head, of Oregon coast was public and is open to the public. And so they named their beer after Public Coast. And they had a 67 gold ale because in 1967, it was made public. So it's just like all these cool ways that you tell that story that most people don't know when they come to the destination, that now they're able to, you can tell this to them and be like, hey, this is something really cool that's right here in our own backyard. So that's just another little geeky thing.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I love it. So Sarah, final thoughts. Where can people find you? Where can people like find more information on what you're doing, what we're talking about, all this type of stuff?
Well, obviously our company's website is naturalretreats.com. And we're really proud of it. It's actually really beautiful. I remember when we redid it, I remember looking at it the first time going, wow, this is gorgeous. Like I want to go to all these places. So if for nothing else, just to go look at the cool pictures. But so our website is naturalretreats.com. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm connected with you and a lot of other folks in the industry. And it's a really great way for me to keep in touch and really keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on, not just, in, vacation rentals, but in hotels and all sorts of things. So I'm definitely there. When I'm not lazy, I do blog a little bit, but I didn't blog all of February and I'm really embarrassed and it's already March 2nd and I haven't done it yet, but I do have a blog, which is Sarah Says What, but that is sarahsayswhat.com. And that's about it. Like I'm me. That's what you get what you get.
I love
like it or not.
I love it. Sarah Says What, we should come up with a theme song for that and put it into like the podcast. That'd be so cool.
Sarah Says What?
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that.
That was a joke in high school because I was always like, what?
Oh, nice.
Oh,
half deaf. I feel it. No, perfect. Well, all my listeners, you guys know that I always tag everything in the show notes. So go ahead, look at the bottom, see the mention in this episode section, and you'll find all of that right there below. Sarah, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I think all my podcast friends, listeners, all of you guys, episodes coming out often. So get ready for more to come.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.